Hey guys, welcome back to the Radium Records channel. I'm Bradley Denniston. In this video today, I'm breaking down my latest song, High Life. Now this song took me quite a while to produce, write, mix, master, and I'm gonna break down everything I did along the way and show you the process behind it and kind of the interesting story behind it, where it started. So let's dive right in. I'm gonna show you all my plugins, master bus settings, vocal chains. I know you guys love this stuff. Let's get into it. All right, before I play the song for you guys, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Like 65% of you guys that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to the channel, and that's kind of lame. So hit that sub button. All right, let's play the track and I'll bring it through the first chorus and then I'm gonna break it down and show you all the different parts. So let's go.
The spotlight is heating up nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake. In the land of the fast times, the stage lights are getting brighter. It's high time to get up and go. All eyes are staring harder. It's time to put on a show. The high life, yeah. Pull the curtains closed. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. High life, yeah. Come and get it on my way. I'm betting on the high life. High life is more than the fame. Woo! That's the high life. The high life. Call lights.
So that is through the first chorus. This song actually has an interesting background and story behind it. I wrote it originally for a TV show opener. So the theme song for a TV show, which is usually like the opening segment on Netflix or Amazon or whatever else. And I can't really tell you guys all the details about what that show was, but it was really cool. They were offering me like $20,000 plus SAG-AFTRA and all this other stuff. So it was a really good deal. And I was like, yo, I want to make something super dope. So a lot of the times when I'm writing, for like a theme song or for a TV show or a movie or something like that, I'm thinking in my head, I want to make something that I'm going to like, right? Because if it doesn't go through, which a lot of the times it doesn't, you might be just writing on spec or writing for a demo fee up front, right? If it doesn't go through, what are you going to do with the song? Because you own it, right? So I was like, I want to make something that I would want to release. And that's kind of how it all came about, was that concept right there. And then I got to work. I just was cutting guitars and coming up with all the ideas, trying to get a good hook that went from like this like chill, cool kind of thing to a raucous, in your face sort of thing. And the mix and all the plugins and everything I'm doing was intentionally for that idea. Is like, keep it cool for the verses, go raucous and hardcore on the chorus. So let's break down and start from the top down on the master bus, because I think that that's a fun way to do it. On the master bus, I have the UAD Manley massive, variable mu. So this is like my go-to as far as master bus compression goes. And I think the reason is because the tubes, I know it's a plugin, guys, by the way. I get these comments on videos like this, like, oh, he said tubes. I'm like, yeah, you fucking idiot. Like, that's what it's modeling, is a tube compressor. So the tube sound on this is when you drive the input, it's kind of like you're getting this really good distortion and harmonic stuff in the mids and the high mids especially, right? So I'll bypass all that I got on the master bus and go to the chorus, this is where it's like really getting pretty hardcore, hitting pretty hard. And I'll bypass this in and out, the Manley, so you can really hear what it's doing with the harmonics. Now, of course, it is compressing, a couple dB, not much really, like a dB and a half. I try to just barely tickle the VU meter on this plugin. And I usually start with this, you can see it says Manley Master Bradley, but I used to start with the preset from Phil Tan. I think it's in here just so you guys can see it if you want to use it. I go to Artist here and I go to Phil Tan and the Master Mix Bus preset. You start there, and then you just kind of mess around with the input and the output and compression, the threshold and all that. You can see I have the threshold at max, so I'm really just looking for the tone of the compressor. This plugin has a tone, so that's what I'm looking for with this. And it kind of tightens things together, but really I'm looking for the harmonic distortion that it's adding in the mids, high mids. Okay, and next up, we have a really cool plugin that I got from Jesse Ray, who is really pretty big mixing engineer. I think he's got, some Grammys or platinum records or something, right? Good dude, funny as hell. But he sent me this and his company Mixland. This thing is really cool. Interesting plugin and interesting concept. This is not a tape machine plugin. It's actually driving, and the sound of it comes from the A to D, D to A, and the EQ. So you're not actually like this original machine, the Sony 3348 tape machine. The tape on it was actually just a storage medium. So it's like a floppy disk, You're just storing the stuff on it. It's not actually like compressing or analog tape, right? So you're getting the sound of the D to A to D, and the EQ, but it sounds fucking sick. So check it out. Now here I'm putting in a nice little EQ curve. You can see it's just kind of like 35 up, 80 down a little bit, 200 up again, 850. Is it 850, 950? Right here. This mid-range is amazing. I really love it, especially pushes the vocals up front in the center. And then you got 4.5 and you have 22K. And so I just kind of like shape this EQ, and the A to D conversion, I like the DA88 on this. And you can push it more by pushing the input and the output, right? But that's what that's doing, giving me that rough, raw kind of sound. And then I'm following it with Gullfoss on the master bus. I love using Gullfoss for shaping and for separating things in the mix, right? Of course, like nothing really works on the master bus if your mix is shit, right? Like if the mix isn't there and you're throwing all these plugins on your master bus, you're like fighting yourself. You'll also notice that I'm going over quite a bit on the stereo bus when all this stuff is bypassed. And the big reason is because I think of the master bus as like a master bus console in front of me. So I think of them all working together. All the plugins work together, right? They don't work in a serial fashion like I'm showing you as I'm breaking down these plugins. So Gullfoss is going to give me separation. You can see the filters. I'm pulling them up here to 36, 37 hertz. So I'm not affecting the bottom sub stuff, and I'm not affecting the top. And I actually don't like what Gullfoss does on the top. So I always bring this filter down to anywhere from 15 to 16K, somewhere in that area. Okay. And the boost is at negative 0.2. Which means it won't boost as much on the low end, pretty much, depending on what your bias is set to. So you can actually like make this bias more towards the low end or more towards the high end, right? And then I have tame and recover going. Okay, so here's with and without Gullfoss. I mean, the separation, the clarity, all the instruments starting to, come apart. That's really what I love about Gullfoss, and that's why I use it. And then Soothe 2. Soothe 2 is, I think I've gone through this before many times, but for any of you that missed it, I only use 2 different presets on Soothe 2 on the master bus. I either use DS low mid cleanup 1 or low mid cleanup 2, and that is under the mastering in advance, and it's these 2 from Chris Longwood. He's just got it dialed in. That's my guy. And these presets are absolutely incredible. If cleanup 1 doesn't work, then cleanup 2 will. That's it. And what this does for me really on Soothe 2 is it kind of tightens back up the whole track. I don't really like when a track gets too wide. It's kind of like outside of the stereo speaker. I like when things can, effects or whatever can go out there. But when you put on headphones, it sounds really weird. It's like out here. When you're listening on speakers, it sounds like over here. I don't like that. I like my shit to be tight and stereo, still wide, right? I want that width and I want that depth in my mix, but I don't want it to be going out here. It sounds really amateur. starts to sound out of phase. And then also it makes the vocal seem like it's not as important. That's just how I feel. I feel like if the vocal is filling up the middle and you have the stereo right, then it feels good. But if you push the stereo out and the vocal isn't getting bigger in the middle, it makes the vocal seem smaller, thinner, etc. So that's what this is doing. It's just tightening it up. I have it at 2x ultra, and then I usually do 4x ultra on offline bounce. So oversampling resolution. Let's bypass this in and out and check out what it's doing. This is pretty subtle, so hopefully you guys are listening on some good headphones or good speakers in a good room. So yeah, that is just magic to me. It just kind of keeps it sounding more like a record tightness, you know, and taking care of some of like the really brittle, harsh stuff at the top. Anything that comes through that really, you know, destroys your ear. Following that up with some Pro Q3. I know there's Pro Q4 out, but I still reach for Pro Q3. I think it's muscle memory. And sometimes I just like the way Pro Q3 sounds more than Pro Q4. But here we go, pushing a little bit of the mid-range for the vocal. And a little bit of the 3K. So like I love 3 to 3.5 for vocal clarity and spit, right? That's where you get the spit. I'll solo out the band so you can hear what I'm saying. So that's really giving you that clarity, that cut through the speakers, you know, any smaller. I think really it's like for bigger speakers, right? Like you open up bigger speakers, you're going to have the sub and all the low stuff competing with the vocal. And that is going to just help the vocal go, you know, it's got that vibe to it. 400, I take down a little bit, like a dB it looks like, just for some clarity. Sometimes that area gets boxy to me. And then we're pushing 30 hertz, which is interesting. Let's hear what that sounds like soloed. Yeah, I love that. That's like the sub, right? The sub. And sometimes I do that with records to make them sound more modern. You know, a lot of rock records, what I don't like is when engineers, producers like sweep out all the bottom of a rock record, a pop record. I don't care what it is. If you take that 30 out, it just, you know, 40 out. Some people sweep all the way up to 50 hertz. And I'm like, dude, you just destroyed your record. It sounds thin. It sounds lifeless. You know, we live in 2025. You know, the future is here. You know, so like you got to have that low end sub represented. And you can also see that I'm doing something interesting on this record that I typically never do. I'm filtering out on a linear phase very high, by the way. So if I'm going to do that sort of filter, I'm going to put the linear phase very high on my Pro Q3, and I'm going to use something like Pro Q, right? Something that's made for this kind of master level stuff. You know, you don't want to use like a stock Logic EQ. It's just going to sound like shit. 24 dB per octave and then 17 hertz. So let's listen to that crossover there. Did you hear it? Yeah, me neither, right? So if you can't hear it, then yeah, get rid of it, because what it's doing is just taking up voltage and it's adding more voltage to everything, which means you're going to be clipping out quicker. You're going to get louder. It's going to have overs. You're going to have all sorts of problems there, right? So that's all I'm doing. I'm just cleaning up. And everything else, like, yeah, you got a little 170. That's probably just like the punch of the kick drum and the of the bass, right? So that's just giving you that body and that push. And I love that area. And then we have the gold clip. The gold clip is something that I constantly have on a record if I'm looking for it to sound as loud as possible, but also dynamic still, right? So we're doing some clipping just of the tops. That's typically what I use this for. Modern setting on this is not something I usually use, by the way. I usually am on the classic. So modern is like, as you can see, it's like a softer knee, okay? And that's just, you could see it right in the graphic. Very simple, very basic. You don't need to read a manual or anything. That's a soft knee clip, right? And then this is a hard clip, and the classic is in between a hard and a soft knee. So on the modern, you have just like a gradual soft curve going on. And I don't know, maybe that sounds more modern. Maybe that's why it's called that. And then I have classic on the actual clip. So you can see what's happening there. I get more gain out of this, and I like the gain on the gold when I have it on the classic here. So this is the gold setting. So if I go to, for example, the modern, I get, this goes to 0.78, and I think it goes like, yeah, 2.5 dB of gain there. And then if I go to classic, I have 1.86 dB of gain, and it goes all the way up to 6 dB. So that's why I'm doing that. 1.86, let's go back here. And let's just check this out. This is bypass in and out. Alchemy is also very special on this. I love the Alchemy. Very interesting too, because I'm making up the gain on this plugin, which is very rare for me to do. But because these plugins are so high quality, like they are made for mastering, this is a very, very good algorithm here. I can use this gain and take everything down 4.6 dB so that I'm just clipping the tops, right? So let's, like, for example, if I went and took this back up, so this is at negative 4.6, if I was at 0 here and I was clipping the tops, you don't have enough headroom because everything's driving in so hard. And I'm not gonna go change the gain staging of all the plugins and all the mix because it would completely destroy my sound. So this is literally just taking that gain down before it hits that clip. So we're using this for some gain staging. All right, so we're just clipping the very top of the snare drum usually when I'm using this. Alchemy softening out the top. Beautiful, beautiful algorithm. 0.91 dB. And yeah, it just sounds sick. Sounds like a record to me. It's hard to compare because you're hearing the gain difference of the 4.66 dB or whatever, but it's amazing and it sounds amazing. So for me personally, you know, you guys don't have to like it. It's not your record. But I want to make these videos for you guys so you can see kind of how I'm getting to the final process, right? And the God particle is usually the last thing on my master bus, typically. Not always, but typically. And what I do here is gain stage again into the green boxes. Very simple, right? Jason, Joshua, and Cradle figured this out to make this simple for you guys. Just hit within the green box. And then you have the EQ, kind of Pultec style, high, mid, low. And then we have our harmonic distortion here, which is at 97%, which is actually 57% with this plugin because it goes to 200%. And then you have the limiting and the output. I always take it back a little bit just because I'm a little bit paranoid. So I go negative 0.1. Okay, so let's hear this in and out. I mean, that's pushing, right? Like this is to the point where it's like getting really loud. And I like that. That's what I'm looking for this song. You can also see, if you go to the scroll wheel here, you can see I'm metering the IO. I'm metering short-term LUFs, LUFs, and peak. And then you have an oversampling ratio as well. I just have that on 1, right? So you can take this all the way up to 8 times oversampling, but I just have it on 1. Sometimes I just like the sound of, you know, not oversampling. And that's okay. Like sometimes I want it to sound hardcore, right? And this is a rock song. I'm not trying to make it sound all polished, I'm not trying to avoid aliasing, which is my favorite thing ever. The talk of aliasing and oversampling and how everyone acts like they can hear aliasing. If I A-B'd aliasing for people, I think 99% would have no clue. It'd be a crapshoot, right? They're like, yeah, that's aliasing. I can hear it, you know, like bullshit. You can't hear aliasing. You are a liar. All right. So anyway, so that's what this is doing. And this is, let's look at the meter here and we'll see what LUFs we're at. Pushing 3.5, right? So negative 3.5, and that's all in the mix. That's all in the gain staging, using clippers, using distortion, saturation, etc. on the master bus. That is everything on the master bus. And bypassing it all in and out for you guys, this is what it sounds like with and without the master bus plugins. So as you can hear, it's subtle, right? Like you see all these plugins and you think, oh, that's so much. Oh my God, you must be pressing the shit out of it. You know, not really. This is a subtle process of opening up the record, making it sound like a finalized record. And a lot of the times I'm mixing into this master bus chain and I'm tweaking. And maybe I'm adding another plugin and going, okay, now I gotta dial it in a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? Because this was made for TV, this was made for a theme song on a TV show, I needed to move fast. And that's just how my workflow has evolved. It's like, move fast, gotta have the Logic session set up. I'm producing, I'm recording even with Master Bus plugins on, you know what I mean? I'll take the, I'll go up here and I'll take the sample rate back down and I might bypass a Master Bus plugin or two, you know, whatever's oversampling, cut a new guitar part, right? Turn it back on, mix it into the record, take the buffer back up to 1,000 samples, right? So rule of thumb, when you're recording or producing, you want to be at the lowest buffer size possible, 32, 64, 128, right? And when you're mixing and mastering, you want to be at the highest because you're going to have more buffer. You're going to have more time for the computer to work, which once you start adding a bunch of plugins and stuff, that's where you're going to need that extra buffer processing. So for any of you out there that needed that tip, I don't know, some of y'all are really far along and you're like, duh. All right, so let's get into the vocals because that's kind of a hot topic for this song specifically. A lot of people commented on this like, oh, you're distorting the vocals too much. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck kind of comment is that? You know, make your own records, you know, do whatever you want with your own records, but definitely don't tell me what I'm distorting too much on my record, right? Like this is all intentional, folks. I've been at this for 28 years now, right? Like I've been mixing, mastering for 15, 16 years now. Platinum records, Grammy nominated work, you know, I don't need people's opinions on what I'm doing with my vocals. And that's not to be rude or mean, right? I'm just saying like these are intentional moves. So I'm in a tuned room. I got my Dutch and Dutch 8Cs. I got multiple listening playback things. I got tuned ears from decades of doing this, you know what I'm saying? So I just don't need, you know, feedback on what too much distortion is, you know what I'm saying? Intentional, folks. All right, so let's break down the vocals. This is the lead vocal on the verse, okay? So we have the virtual mix rack. I bypass this because sometimes I'm using the Slate mic, right? This time I'm not. So this is bypassed. I could literally go boop. But here is where all the magic is starting to happen, right? Is on this FG73. Pushing this is kind of my favorite thing. My favorite 1073 distortion input, you know, how a 1073 sounds. And I've worked with vintage 73s and all the ripoffs and all the knockoffs of 1073s, right? And the 1080 series consoles and all that. But the 1073, when you drive it, has a distinct distortion to it. I think this plugin right here from Slate does the best job at that distortion. So just to play it and bypass all the other plugins, besides the tune, I'm going to keep the tune on, and so you can hear the drive.
The spotlight is heating up nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake. In the land of the fast times, stage lights are getting brighter. It's high time to get up and go. All eyes are staring harder. It's time.
So good, right? Like I don't think there's another plugin that has that kind of like, wow, that actually sounds like a 1070. It doesn't sound exactly like a 1073 input drive because there's so many different 1073s, right? I've had like vintage ones, you know, where you have to take them into the shop and then they get, you know, fixed, right? And then they sound completely different. You find your favorites and you go, wow, this one has this beautiful color to it. And this one sounds more rounded. And this one sounds more mid-range aggressive, etc. This is just kind of like beautiful distortion, right? Has that beautiful kind of rounding off the top. And yeah, it's just fat. It's fat and thick and warm as fuck, right? And then you have the FG 116, and I'm usually doing this in parallel because this is a really intense compressor, right? So I just parallel that in. And then the Metatune, because who doesn't need a little help with some tuning, right? And this is at 33.7, so it's pretty slow, and 94.5 on the tune. And I have it like on a custom, which is like a pentatonic kind of scale. And the Pro Q3, taking out a little bit of that nasal and taking all the bottom out. Any rumbly, stompy stuff, because when I'm recording, da 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 da, like I'm really going in, you know. I'm trying to nail the performance, so I'm gonna sweep all the stuff out that could be me stomping, hitting a, you know, mic stand, whatever. 481. Let's listen to this soloed out.
The spotlight is heating up night. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake. In the land of the fast times, the stage lights are getting brighter. It's
Right? So I like that mid-range. I like the 400 or 500 area, but just wanted to tuck a little bit of that back because it starts to take some of the intelligibility out. So 2.25 there, ducking that down. Pro DS, my favorite de-esser. I don't need to explain this. Super simple de-essing. And then a little extra Pro Q3. No clue why I didn't just do all this on the other Pro Q, but sometimes this is the way it works. You're just like flying and you're like moving shit, right? But this is 622. So a lot of the times this area builds up on the TLM 103 for me. This kind of 600 to 800 area. Let's hear this.
the spot. Not nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The same life is getting harder to fake.
Just that like boxy mid nasally kind of area that I don't really like that much in my voice. And that's because I'd say I'm a tenor, as far as a singer goes and my range. So when I'm up there, da 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 da, like we're pushing up the ba da 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 da, we're up here. So that nasal, the nasal is gonna go get pushed up as well. Sometimes the nasal is down here, right? Sometimes it's like 250, 350, 400. But when you're up here, it's around 600 to 700, right? And then we have 1.4, my favorite kind of mid-range area. No clue why I'm doing 0.11 dB of 11.5K. But then this is a little body, 142. And again, I'm sweeping even more because I'm a paranoid freak when it comes to that stuff. And the Valhalla vintage Verb. And I saved the UAD AMS, I think, for the chorus to open it up. So that's off on this, on the verses. But here's the Valhalla settings. Tight plate, now. Little pre-delay, 2.67, and low cut at 300. Bass mold at 1.04 at 1K, right? So this is actually a bass mold at it's like a shelf, right? So you have 1K and down, or 1080 and down. I'm just multing it by 0.4. Kind of ridiculous, but whatever. That's the crossover point. And then that is sending to this bus 5, which is a sexy little widening trick I do. And you can see I've shaped the shit out of this one so that I get rid of the bottom and the top, and I'm focusing mainly on the mid-range here. So the mid's going to be like spread thicker in the middle. And just so we can really hear this, let's solo out the vocal.
The spotlight is heating up nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake. In the land of the fast times, the stage lights are getting brighter. It's high time to get up and...
So what I do with that, I exaggerated it for you so you can really hear what it's doing. It's widening out the vocal, thickening it in the middle. I turn it all the way up and then I start turning it down to where like I can't hear it. And then I'm like, oh, I can't hear it, but you feel it, right? That's the whole idea of that. It's just thicken out the vocals without hearing the doubling effect and the chorusing and stuff, because that's not my intention with that effect. So you have the doubler after the Pro Q and the S1 imager to go a little bit wider even. And that's all that is. That's in parallel, blending it in to thicken up the lead vocal. And then, of course, it's going to my vocal mix bus. And the vocal mix bus has the FG Gray, which is super dope, kind of SSL style compressor. And just kind of a classic sound by now. And then we got a thick mix. That's usually my preset that I like. And then we got the little Radiator, which is super, super cool for this kind of aggressive vibe. And that's why I have it. But here you go. I'm just taking the heat up a little bit and the mix. And let's bypass this in and out.
The spotlight is heating up nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake. In the land of the fast times, the stage lights are getting brighter. It's high time to get up and go. All eyes are staring harder.
That's where the balls are, right? Look at my balls. That's the rock and roll right there. For me, that's rock and roll. Yeah, just an amazing plugin. Just sounds so good. If you have that turned off, it sounds like a puny little vocal that's like super pop glossy. And this record is not pop glossy. Like, sorry, that's not what I was going for. And then we have the Pro Q3 doing some shaping, right? And then the Soothe 2 soothing out some stuff, right? And let's see what this is soothing out. Because all the distortion, that's probably why I'm using this.
The spotlight is heating up nice. Hold tight, we're in for a long night. The dream life is getting harder to fake.
Yeah, Soothe is just like really taming those little like, you know, like any of those like, the little honky stuff that kind of pops up in the 2K area and above. So it looks like I'm really pinpointing that 700 area as well. So that kind of, I think when you add the little radiator, right? And then you're adding some thickness down on the EQ here, right? Like in here, the 159 and stuff. You can see I'm dipping 500 again and I'm pushing 943. It's like you're trying to get the mid-range really pinned, but you don't want that nasal and that box. So that's kind of what I'm doing in stages throughout the mix. And that is the vocals, like straight up. The other vocals in this, you know, whether they're double stacked or whatever, like for example, in the chorus here, we have just these, you know, there's like this guy here.
Oh yeah, high life, yeah, come and get it.
So those, the only difference there is I probably tweak some stuff, right? And then I change the reverb. So I add the UAD AMS on the ambient setting, which just gives this huge sound to them. And that's a really cool like thing to do. I always love doing that. But they're all going to the vocal mix bus. And there's not many stacks in this because it is kind of like a raw rock and roll kind of vibe. And I didn't want it to get too stacked up. The only stacks I really have are these punctuations in the second verse to make the whole song kind of move and whoa, now we're getting into a different world and more things are happening, you know what I mean? And that's on these parts.
Who's right when the middlemen go? A cold knife never hurt when your back's turned. They're all here for the...
So like that, right? That's a really fun moment, I thought. So here I just stack those up with these doubles.
They're all here for the show.
And that's fun because it's like, it throws it into the, whoa, you know, like it's a moment, lasers are happening. I don't know. Maybe they're lasers, who knows? Are you guys liking this so far? If you are, please make sure you drop some love in the comments, you know, hit the like button on the video. That's all I ask. This is all free game, you know, I'm spending my time on this. I gotta pay my editors to edit this thing. Yeah, just appreciate a little bit of love in the comments. A thank you goes a long way. Back to this. This is some more vocal stacked up stuff.
It's a burning brighter. Burning brighter. It's a burning brighter.
Little harmony action there, right? And then, yeah, just a couple little things going on with the doubles and the stacks. And here's another one.
Ha! Solid party show. Ha! Ha! Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I thought that was a really fun one, man. Like when I did this part, I was like really feeling myself. This, you know, like I did this like scream in here and distorted the crap out of it. It's just a moment, man. These are all little moment vibes, and highly recommend when you're making records, you always put those little moment vibes in there that make things pop. And don't just do it like haphazardly. Like really do it on parts that you think are going to be interesting, or you know, they're important parts, they're important phrases or sayings or whatever. You don't want to just be putting harmonies on everything for no reason. You don't want to stack doubles or ad libs on things for no reason. I think that's a really dated sound of like rappers in 2005. Yeah, it's like yeah, okay, get money. What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, bro, you're just doing that because your song sucks. Like, your writing sucks, your flow sucks, your cadence sucks, so you gotta fill it up with a bunch of fucking hype ad-libs. Like, that's not the point and the intention. You want moments, and the moments are going to make the record feel a certain way at a certain time. That's why I do it. Now let's get into the drums. Originally, this is what I had for the drums. I had programmed all of them with MIDI, And I used, let's look at the kit here. I used Addictive Drums. So the Addictive Drums kit's really good for sketching. Sometimes I'll even make it to the final of my song. But in this song, I actually got a drummer. I got Kip Allen to replay all the parts. He's out of Nashville. Super dope. And yeah. So here's the MIDI stuff with Addictive Drums.
It's high time to get up and go. All eyes are staring. Oh, the high life.
So as you can hear, they're pretty fleshed out, right? Like I flesh out the drums. I am a drummer, so like all the parts are here, right? They're all in MIDI. They're all fleshed out. They have the fills. I have the different parts, etc. I stack in tambourines and I stack in new loops, etc. to make things more interesting. I have cymbal roll samples that transition to new parts, all that good stuff. But then I replace the drums with Kip Allen playing the drums. And this is what we got for the live kit here.
It's high time to get up and go. High life, yeah.
So much more dynamic, so much more human, and just kind of brought everything to life. Live drums can do that. A drummer can bring the whole track to life because there's dynamics in everything. It doesn't sound like machine guns. You know, no two hits are the same. There's fills like this, right, where he's starting to build up the toms that just make it a lot more human. Right, it also feels more rock and roll because it feels more live to me. So these drums are going to a drum mix bus, which have the 3348 tape machine on them again. And you can see the EQ curve's kind of interesting here. It's like going, climbing up to the 22K. And then we have the Pro Q4 pushing a little bit of that 49, taking down some of that 300 area, you know, 268 to be exact, 4300, getting rid of some of those cymbal, you know, that really hardcore, harsh stuff. And then the L1 limiter, just catching overs and probably barely limiting by a dB or two, right? Let's hear it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, high life, yeah, come and get it, on my way, I'm riding on the high life, it's more than the fame, woo, that's the high.
So with drums on this style of like pop rock, alt rock kind of vibe, I want the drums to be felt, but not necessarily heard. I want you to feel them like in your chest. I want you to feel the rhythm and the groove, but I don't want them to be like, here's the drums. You know, this is not rap. This is not trap. It's not R&B. It's not like, here are the drums. The drums are the most important thing, right? The groove is very important in this song, but hearing the drums is like secondary to feeling the drums. Okay, so let's get into the guitars because I think the guitars are pretty interesting. And there's some effects and stuff in here. We got these Jag effects here. And all my amps on this record are mixed wave amps. Like they just sound so good. So the Benson on blows me away every time. Primavera, this is amazing from Pulsar. Like a spring reverb vibe with a little extra sauce. You know, it's got some drive and stuff to it. Super dope combo. That's how I'm getting those effects. The electric guitar here, which is going to be kind of a clanky sound. This is going to be the Benson amp, followed by the Benson spring reverb, followed by the Valhalla. And check this out. Put those guitars behind the vocals. Let the vocals be really dry and up front and in your face whispering to you, right? That's kind of the idea of this. Get hazy. Feels like a hazy Los Angeles summer day, right? That's the idea here. Give them the Hollywood vibe, because that's what this song is about. And then we have the Jag here, which is going to be my panned left rhythm guitar. Doing that, right? There's a 3-chord progression going on in the chorus. And here's some EQ here, pushing that 500. I always love that in electric guitars. So we take 500 out of our drums, our boxiness and vocals, etc. And then we pop that shit in guitars and put it in the sides, right? And here's all the rhythm guitars. So here's Jag. So I got the Jaguar and the Telly. So they're going left and right on the chorus. So good. I love that kind of stompy, you know? Oh my God. Makes me so happy. All right. So, and then I have on, this is actually interesting. So these are the acoustic guitars, and I think I tracked my Martin and a Taylor on this. And the 251 Blackbird Studio, favorite on any acoustic guitar, just sounds so good. And then I'm using some Pultec style EQ here from Slate. It looks like I'm not doing much here. Well, I'm boosting a lot, but not really for a Pultec. 8K and attenuating at 100 Hertz, it looks like. So let's listen to this. This is just the acoustics here. Oh, by the way, on acoustics, always, personally, I'll use a room or a plate typically, but I really like room reverbs. That's just for acoustics, because I want them to sound natural, right? I don't want them to sound like they're all reverbed out in some weird reverb. So it's very, very small amount of room reverb. And the Valhalla room is amazing for this. But let's bypass the plugins so you can hear the original recorded, right here in this room, acoustic guitars. Like, I'm not doing crazy amounts of any processing. Now remember, this isn't really a fair comparison because I'm bypassing the actual mic when I bypass everything. So you're not getting the 251. You're literally just getting the Slate digital mic in its most sterile, flat frequency response state, which is not a really expensive mic. It's like a Chinese mic, right? But it still sounds really good. You just got to get the mic placement right and get it cranking. And all I'm doing really is just trying to make it a little bit more aggressive and give it a little bit more room and take out the boom. There's so much stuff playing in the chorus that if you make these acoustic guitars really big, you're not going to hear them. They're just going to get lost in the sauce. So layering stuff is like what I love doing in production always. So you have other electric guitars as well here, which they aren't playing, it looks like. But the bass, let's put the bass in. This is a P bass, and the P bass is going through the Benson. So this gives it like a guitar kind of drive sound. And then we go through a bass amp, which is kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever done that. And then we're doing some crazy EQ. So let's hear all this together. You should steal that right there. Like, take the Mixwave Benson and the Mixwave Evo. What is this? Yeah, the Evo 4, looks like. And the Pro Q3. And literally do that with your bass. Because that's just a P bass going through this. And it sounds like the coolest fuzz bass I've ever heard. I think it's a total vibe. So here's everything in the mix here.
The high life.
Yeah, getting that pocket, getting that grit, getting that punch. Everything's just fucking going, you know? And yeah, that just reminds me of just like rock and roll. Little bit of glam, little bit of glitz. That's really what this song is about. And I wanted to just really capture that. And then we have the horns. Last but not least, right? We have these horns here. And we have trombone, trumpets. We have alto sax, tenor sax, bari sax. Here's all these parts. These are tucked in to the chorus and really just playing like to punctuate everything. And I didn't want these to be super loud here. I want these only to be loud on this transition part, which I'll show you what that sounds like as well. This part that's all stacked up and affected. But these are just there to like give grit, give a timbre and a texture to the chorus. And they sound like this. Now without them, and then with them, and you kind of miss them when you take them out.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, high life, yeah, come and get it, on my way, I'm riding on the high life, it's more. Oh yeah, high life, yeah, come and get it, on my way, I'm riding on the high life, it's more than the fame.
Notice they're not like something you're hearing a lot. Like you're not going like, oh, the horns, I want to hear the horns, you know? But they are there and they're not in the way of anything. And they're thickening things out and they're making the chorus punchier and more interesting and more texturized and different sounding. It doesn't sound just like a rock record now. Hopefully that makes sense. Kind of gives it a glam. And that's really like what I'm going for with this record is like rock and roll, alt rock, pop rock with like a little glitz, a little wink to like Hollywood and like overproduced kind of vibes and shit like that. And money and champagne and shit like that, right? So this is the horn mix bus, which I do some mid-side stuff here. I got the Tube Tech SMC Tubey, one of my favorites for horns. It's a multi-band tube compressor. And then we got the Studer A800. And then we have the special sauce here, which is the UAD-X Hitsville reverb chamber, which is just awesome. Just sounds so good. So very musical stuff. Everything's trying to be very musical. And then we get into these affected parts on this is probably my favorite part of the whole record, to be honest with you, the post-chorus.
That's the high life. The high life. Call lights flooding, endless chatter.
Now, because originally this was for a TV show and for kind of sync licensing ideas, we want dynamics. We want parts to like flow in and out. We want, you know, not just like verse, chorus, out, right? I wanted different parts. Like here's a post-chorus, you know? And this got really cool and vibey. And this was Andrew Morgan Smith, by the way, on all the saxes and everything, he's my guy. So my go-to dude. Here are all of them soloed. And he actually did all the delays and reverbs on these and printed them in. So all I had to do was throw them through my horn mix bus and level them and get them right. And you can hear they're like panning left and right, kind of coming in and out of the ear. So cool, right? So that was like the little special secret extra sauce there that gave me the vibe. And everything else, we're just talking about mixing, balancing, having parts come in and out on verses, you know, switching up verse 2. So the drums switch up a little bit, acoustic guitars, different things kind of come in and out. But that's really it. And the vocal stuff that I showed you already, that takes us home free on this record. Hopefully you guys really like the breakdown. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, you know? Like I'm here to answer questions. If you want to check out the song, you can click the link in the description. I'll have a link to the song so you can go check out High Life. Really appreciate you guys' support. Drop some love on the video. And if you do want to get a little bit deeper into my process for making these kind of songs and getting sync licensing placements with music, I've also dropped a link for my song creation formula. Like I've shot videos on this process that I use to make these records over and over and over. And it's a huge collection of resources there. So just click the link in the description. You'll get all the videos, the downloads. And I also do song creation challenges where I make a song with you over Zoom and over live streams and stuff. So I highly recommend that if you guys are trying to go a little bit further with everything. Thanks for tuning in. Go check out the song High Life, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.